analytics aside, just the eye test is going to look as good, if not better, this year.
I agree with that.
It's another year of being in Tony White's defense. It's another year of this total package defense that we're trying to get used to, where guys can shift around and play different positions and do whatever they want. And I only see upside, at least from the eye test standpoint.
Like you kind of, the eye test, I think we're going to look the same, if not better. That's why I say statistically, it might look a little worse. But again, that doesn't mean that the defense is going to play worse.
45, 40, 35, 40, he's going to go! It's time, people, feel us!
Big Red Junkies.
Day by day, he gets better and better! He gets better and better! Team is MVP! If we die, we die!
Man, it's moving a child in that. Put him in the aisle.
Bring that trophy back to Lincoln!
I'm back.
There it is.
Hell yeah.
Fuck yeah!
Matt is back in studio. We are, as someone put it on our countdown show that came out today, actually, this is Wednesday night at about 12 a.m. That's how dedicated we are to this for you guys.
Thursday morning, Wednesday
Thursday
night,
morning,
whatever.
12 a.m. It's actually my birthday day.
Happy
Yeah.
birthday.
This old fuck's already getting older.
Where's that horn?
With the buttons.
Yeah, apparently I can't figure the buttons out either. It is getting late though. However, I'm not drinking tonight, so you know
It's early.
It is. Yeah,
It's early.
It's early. We need to shift the mindset.
Yeah.
Shift the mindset.
Yeah.
I'm done drinking. I'm drinking water now.
There you go. He switched over.
I was drinking earlier on a different thing.
And I've got nothing but beers. So.
We just got done doing over 2.5 hours on our schedule breakdown, preseason
Prop bets,
questions, breaking everything down, letting you guys know how we're going to go 12-0 in the regular season. It's going to be fantastic. Can't wait. Look out for that one coming out next week. If you like the show, do us a favor. Like, subscribe, share it with your friends, throw it on social media if you want to. We put a lot of work into what we're doing here, and we do it because we like sharing this stuff with you.
And thank you for the now over 1,300 people that have subscribed to it on YouTube.
Oh, yeah. Thank you so much. You guys are all awesome.
Done fucked it up.
And we're loving every minute we're doing of this stuff with you guys. Enough of that. Let's get into the defense, the black shirts, the boys, the guys that, when we did the offensive preview last week, there's questions. There's a lot of questions, but there's a lot of excitement. There's a lot of anticipation of things that we don't really know about. It's different in this show.
Yes.
Yeah.
We know a shit ton more about what we should be able to expect out of this group.
A whole lot more answers in this one than question marks in the other one.
Yeah,
goddamn trained killers is what we got here.
Yeah, well, there's a lot more real excitement about things that we know are factual instead of, hey, this might be fun, this might be cool. There's some of that too, but not near as much. Kicking things off, I would like to start on the back end where there are the most questions. I would say, just simply because we've acknowledged this several times on our off-season shows so far. There's a lot of youth back there.
Oh my God.
The frontline guys, the starters that we have, for the most part, there's quite a bit of experience there. But behind them, it drops off real quick when it comes to games played and game minutes. Jed, let me hear what you have to say with starting off with your favorite player, the guy Gifford, who's going to basically be running everything on the backside of the defense.
I mean, he's to me, he's the biggest key on the entire defensive team. I mean, I know everybody's going to do the stud names of Hutmaker, Robinson, Jamari Butler, all the...
They are studs.
Of course they are. That's not me criticizing any of them. But Gifford, to me, is the top guy. How he goes is how we go. And,
he seems to be the most vocal leader on the defense.
And most of when I say how he goes, we go, isn't necessarily his play on the field. It's what he does off the field. And we've been seeing that like crazy on those Chasing 3 episodes. The things that he talks about, the latest one where he was talking about John Butler coming in and the impact that he's going to have, that is just going to permeate through to the younger guys, the countless younger guys that we have in that defensive back room for John Butler in the future.
Well, and You lead right into the biggest question mark that we had, I think, up until the last couple of weeks was John Butler.
Yep.
What was he going to look like taking over that room? How much resistance was his voice going to get compared to what they were all used to? I mean, Evan Cooper, just from a stylistic standpoint, the little that we've seen between the press conference that we got at John Butler this last week, between the stuff that we've seen on the most recent Chasing Through, which came out 2 days ago, we're getting a glimpse at what he is, and he is an extremely intense, direct dude, which he is going to be a leader from a standpoint of I am the coach. Whereas I think some of what Evan Cooper was best at was relating to the players and being a friend who was also helping them get better in life and coaching them. Like, you could get on a guy, but he was definitely one of the boys, whereas John Butler is an old school, hard-nosed, very direct coach. I mean, he's obviously good at what he does, but there's a stylistic difference there, and that's undeniable.
And I think I heard this on the radio today. I listen to way too many radio shows, so I'm brain farting on who exactly said it on which show. But one of the things with John Butler, as far as the transition between Evan Cooper and the abruptness of it, I think having the leaders that we have at the top of it, specifically in that defensive back room, whether it's a Deshaun Singleton, Buford, Hartsogs, I mean, he might not be at the top as far as seniority, but Gifford and those types of guys, I think having those guys already have been gone through a transition of coaching staffs to be able to have a different voice and them already know how to transition with a different voice is only going to help that transition in of itself with John Butler to be able to filter that down to the new guys in a general sense. I think that's going to help us immensely.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that. Matt, have you had a chance to look at, the John Butler stuff that's come out so far? Have you seen his press conference or anything like that?
I've not seen his press conference. I just saw the press clippings that come out for who he is as a coach, and then obviously when we talked about him on the show.
Yeah.
So.
He's, like I said, he's a very direct dude. I'm excited about the stuff that he's going to bring just from my standpoint of, hey, look, I was just coaching some of the best defenders in the entire NFL, which means in the entire world.
One of the things that I thought was kind of interesting going to that the open practice a few weeks ago was, and granted, I know that it's a little bit different depending on the position that you're coaching, but one of the things was like, so if the team competition, where it was offense versus defense, and they're on the opposing 30-yard line, John Butler was completely on the other side of the field on the goal line.
Oh, yeah.
So he's 60, 70 yards away from anything that's happening. But it was like he wanted to have such a step back to be able to see the entire picture of what was going on with his secondary that it was kind of interesting to kind of look around, and I talked about that open practice where there was so much to look at that my head was spinning half the time. But I did make it a point to see where some of the coaches were lined up to where they were watching all their players. And seeing John Butler so far away, but still being able to see the entire thing rather than being closer and maybe not being able to see the entire thing, I thought that was kind of interesting on how he coaches the team.
Well, and he talked a lot in his press conference about how his first several weeks here with the team, which he's still in he's week 5 or 6.
Yeah.
His first several weeks, he spent that time trying to not get to know his guys. He didn't want to get to know his guys yet. He didn't want to get to know the talent in the room yet. He wanted to get to know the defense. He wanted to get to know the style of the coaches that he was coaching under and what his exact role was going to be. And I think that's awesome, but I'm curious to know if if what he was doing back there was more of just trying to get a real overall picture of what the defense is trying to do, or if that's just the vision he wants to see and be able to look at his guys.
Probably both, but yeah.
It's interesting. I also don't know if he's one of those coaches that's going to be on the sideline or is he going to be a booth guy?
Yeah, I don't know.
Is because Tony White likes to be on the sideline.
Yeah.
Maybe because he's a co-defensive coordinator and he's, that second guy. Maybe he is an eye in the sky type of a guy.
Yeah.
Who knows? That's all something we're going to find out probably game 1 against UTEP. But from just a standpoint of coaching, I think that we got, if it was possible, we got an upgrade there over Evan Cooper. Like we talked about, we're missing him on the front end with recruiting and a talent evaluation, potentially. We don't know anything about Butler's prowess there. But
I still
from a coaching
say,
aspect, I don't know how you can call it a downgrade by any means.
I still say as a whole, I would not call it an upgrade, but that does not mean I call it a downgrade either. I think there are different aspects. You kind of just said it. Like
from a coaching perspective, purely on the field stuff,
probably
there's no way that he's not one of the very best guys you could have in that room.
When I say what I just said, I'm encompassing everything not just
Evan
on
Cooper
the field
was doing.
stuff.
Yeah.
So again, I'm not necessarily going to call it an upgrade, but that doesn't mean I'm downgrading it by any means.
Yeah.
It's just different.
The other guys that he's working with in that room, I do think it's interesting. I heard that we hired an assistant for him that's going to be coming in and working with the corner specifically. That was either an assistant or a player at Carolina with Rhule.
Okay.
I don't remember who it was. I'd have to go dig in to find out who that was, but I didn't know if you'd heard anything about that yet. Who are the other guys we kind of expect to be lined up back there? From what we're hearing on stuff, it sounds like across from Tommy Hill right now, Marquise Buford's kind of filling that CB2 spot. Yeah,
that's pretty much the way that it seems that it's going to be Buford. As far as at that open practice, Jeremiah Charles looked really good. I'm not going to sit here and say that Jeremiah Charles is going to start, but to me, with the way that he looked, again, in the fourth practice of fall camp, that doesn't mean it could mean something. It could mean nothing. But he looked like a guy that is building to be a guy that is a very serviceable second string guy. Sierra Wright came in and made a lot of really good plays. He jumped a route on Jamal Banks for an interception and returned that a little ways. I think the top crust of the defensive back room is very, very good. Everything below that needs a shit ton of work. That doesn't mean that they're bad. It's just that they're super fucking young. This is a room that has 20-something guys, and 14 of them are freshmen or redshirt freshmen.
Yeah.
So the inexperience in that room is just so low. And, I mean, over the last couple of days, we have Bly Hill coming back to practice full-time. That's going to help tremendously.
But Rhule also did say in his press conference on Saturday that his timeline's not changed. He's back practicing, but his timeline, he's still expected to miss the first 2 or 3 weeks of the season.
I agree, but I'm just the visual of him being out there.
Back out there, yeah.
Is a very big benefit for this secondary.
I wonder how much of the Marquise Buford leadership, because, we've seen it in a couple episodes now of the Chasing Three, if there's a second super loud voice on the defense, it's probably him. And he is barking at dudes, and he is pushing. They kind of featured him 2 or 3 episodes ago.
Yep.
And he talked about that. He's like, yeah, I might not have been around here last year, so I didn't get to have much of a voice.
Yeah.
But I'm back, and I'm not backing down from anybody. That's at least how I've taken it. And to have that type of leadership on the team at a starting position, regardless of where he was, because I think we were kind of slotting him in at the free safety prior to the Bly Hill injury, right?
Yep.
I mean, just to have him out there, have him next to Gifford, that's going to be huge for us. Even if Jeremiah Charles winds up he's a freak athlete. Everybody already knows that. It's going to be hard to keep him off the field, but having that be your second tier guy,
I'll take it.
Absolutely.
Yep.
When we look at the rest of that DB's room, I mean, depth chart wise, there's nothing past the second level that's not freshman or redshirt freshman.
No.
Is there anybody else that you're excited about that's coming up?
I mean, I'm excited about a lot of these young guys, but I just don't know really how much they're going to get to play. Like, outside of having a lot of injuries.
Yeah.
I mean, Roger Gradney just got a torn ACL in that open practice, so he's already out. I mean, there's a lot of guys that love Bryce Turner as a redshirt freshman to possibly do some stuff. Jaden Doss is just now moving over to defensive back after playing wide receiver last year. Like, I don't really know. Dwight Boodle's getting a lot of talk. But
he's a guy that I was
but these are guys that are sitting at like third string guys, not second string guys. So I just don't know that a lot of those guys are really going to get a lot of time outside of injuries.
Don't think that they'll rotate quite as much as what the front end of the defense is going to. Because, I mean, on the front end, it's sounding like you got to go 4 deep in order to keep them off the field.
Yeah.
But moving up to the linebacker spot, I thought an interesting development on Saturday, which really kind of made me, pause when we were thinking about our countdown of our top 50 most important players and coaches heading into this year, Stephon Thompson was on there.
Yeah.
And I think everybody and their mom had kind of thought in their mind, like, this is a Tony White guy. He was recruited at Syracuse. He's transferring in after having played and had an outstanding freshman season at Syracuse. You know, not major, but for a freshman to play as much as he did, he was awesome. This should be a plug and play, kind of a savior for a room that we think is pretty thin, or thought were pretty thin. Now we hear on Saturday, he might be the odd man out looking in, that they're comfortable with running with the three guys that are ahead of him.
Yeah.
And that Vincent Shavers might even end up being a fourth and bumping him to number 5.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah.
I think that goes a lot to say what Vincent Shavers has been able to do in this room so far.
Well,
That and the guys that are there.
Before we get too far into Vincent Shavers, just have to say, because he likes all of our stuff and clearly watches, Vincent Shavers Sr., thank you for watching. Thank you for following all of our stuff.
Hell yeah, man.
But it's kind of funny with hearing the stuff that we're hearing about Vincent Shavers. I almost kind of start to, and I know a lot of people are going to respond to this and be like, he's not close to that, blah, 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 just yet, blah, whatever. He's almost starting to sound a lot like what Levante David was when he first got here.
Oh.
Now, again, relax.
Goosebump check.
That doesn't mean he's
Yikes.
Levante David, what Levante David is now. If people remember correctly, when Levante David transferred in here as a JUCO kid, going into game 1, he was a third-string linebacker behind 2 other guys. He only got the start because the first 2 guys got injured. And I think it was against Maine was the first game, and he had like 11 tackles. He played great, everything else. And Bo Pelini stands up there in the post-game press conference when he's asked about how Levante David plays. He goes, well, he had a good game, but he was out of position a lot and blah, 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 blah. And it's like, he's a see-ball, get-ball guy, and he made a shit ton of plays. And he was just kind of a guy that maybe only got on the field due to injuries, but when he got on the field, he wrecked shit up.
Oh, yeah.
Vincent Shavers is almost kind of the way he's being talked about now, specifically over the last 3 or 4 days, where if he gets his opportunity, look the fuck out.
Yeah, he's all motor.
Yes.
All motor.
Because even Tony White was like, we almost kind of have to back him down. Like, okay, you're really fucking good. Just let's, hold on. Like pulling the reins back on a horse kind of thing. Like,
yeah.
No, let go of those reins. Let's go. Like,
just run. Let him run.
So I was already super excited about Vincent Shavers possibly for his true freshman season, but hearing the stuff that we've heard this week, I'm even more excited about Vincent Shavers.
The guys that we have up top on that, it sounds like it's kind of a toss-up between Javin Wright and John Bullock, who's getting more play there.
Yeah.
But Mekhi Bayer is a guy who we saw play outside at kind of that jack position, outside linebacker a little bit more last year. Sounds like they've really moved him inside, if I'm not mistaken. Like
Seems
that's
like it, yeah.
Reading between everything, they haven't outright said it, but between what Dvorak said and what Rhule has mentioned a couple different times, it sounds like they're seeing him play more there. You think that's more of a depth thing, or is it more of that's where he's naturally going to be able to sit in?
I think it could be either. I think you're going to see a fair amount of rotation between those 3 guys.
How many times have we said a positionless defense?
Yeah,
that absolutely.
I mean,
it's not about if he's playing, middle or weak side. He's going to be on the field because he needs to be.
Yeah.
He really came. He was a guy that came on a lot end of last year. Didn't have a ton of availability because there were so many guys that were showing out, and with the depth that we have now. And the size difference now that they've kind of established, like there was a lot of guys that were playing basically D-end / outside linebacker last year, that there's been a size difference now. There's been a gap put there. Those dudes that were kind of the tweeners last year, the Cam Lenhart, the Jamari Butler, those guys, they've all they've bulked weight to say, hey, no, I'm a D lineman. And the guys like MJ Sherman, it looks like, at least the couple short clips that I've seen of him, he looks like he's trimmed down slightly from when he came over from Georgia. I don't know if that's the case or not, but he just looks trimmer.
I think it's a little bit, and I know we haven't gotten to the defensive line stuff yet, but it's a lot like so James Williams, Elijah Judy, Cam Lenhart, those types of guys, they change their body. They might weigh the same, but they change their body to look different.
Yeah.
So the weight might have stayed the same, but the way that their body looks is completely different.
Well, that's like every offensive lineman that looks like they're skinny now.
Yeah.
When we were watching that last Chasing 3 right before we started recording this, you were like, "Oh yeah," I was like, "Who the hell is that guy?" Just kind of a tall, goofy looking skinny kid, and you're like, "That's Bryce Benhart." I was
Yeah.
like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
It looked weird because they were also in weird practice stuff and they were catching punts. So how the hell am I supposed to know who that is?
Yeah.
But back to the linebackers, moving to the outside, it sounds like the depth is there. Everybody hit the panic button on Prince.
Your mama yelling.
After Rhule's press conference on Saturday, after the scrimmage that was closed, and the comments were, "Oh, what's going on? Is he having a hard time?" It sounded the way that Rhule talked about it, the way that I took out of it. I didn't hit as much of a panic button, but it was more of he needs to stick to the process. He needs to have his head focused on what he needs to have his head focused on. Stop worrying about other stuff. He's an extremely, he comes from a deep talent family. They're extremely family driven. They're extremely, they're supportive of each other, but his brother is doing awesome at Ole Miss. He had another brother. I can't remember where he played at. But his brother, Prince Lee, that's at Ole Miss is he's from Florida to Ole Miss, starter at Ole Miss. That's going to be probably a playoff team this year.
Yep.
They're good. And we saw enough of Prince Will last year to know that he's got the talent and the ability to get out there. It all seemed weird to hear those things, but then he rolls them out in the press conference yesterday morning. It's like, what's happening?
Yep.
I think everybody was just a little on edge with everything else going on within the program.
Well, the fact that Rhule was pissy for the whole press conference didn't help.
I think there was just a lot of reading into that press conference.
And I didn't read a shit ton into that about Prince Will, mainly because we heard this when Micah Mazuka first came here. We heard this when Stephen Thompson first came here, that there was something that just he wasn't picking up this or that, whatever. It's clearly, we've said it 1,000 times, they say it all the time, the standard is the standard.
Yeah.
We heard it with the Prince Will stuff. He has to fall in love with the process. Some of these guys have a trouble, and that doesn't necessarily mean that the way that the previous place that they might have been at, I know that doesn't affect Prince Will, but specifically with those other two guys that transferred in, it doesn't mean that the other places did it wrong. We just do it different here. And people need to follow in love with the process that Matt Rhule has and this staff has. Sometimes it's a little harder to transition than others. Sometimes we freak out about it. We kind of freaked out about the Mazuka thing. We kind of freaked out about the Thompson thing. And very shortly after the little freak out, they're back on the field and everything's perfectly fine.
Yeah.
It's kind of the same thing with the Prince Will thing. It got brought up. It got announced. Clearly, they are talking to the player about it well before they bring it up with the media. So it's not a surprise to somebody like Prince Will. And he's getting it figured out. I'm good. I believe in this staff. I believe that these players believe in this staff. It's going to get figured out. I'm not worried about it.
I'm not worried about it from a standpoint of him playing wise. I'm not worried about it from what he's going to put on the field. I'm more worried about the fact that there's enough depth and enough talent now on this defense that if you're not on your A game every day, all day right now, you're going to get lapped.
Yep.
There's dudes barking at your heels right now. And you were that guy last year, I think it was second team all Big Ten for a freshman. You and Cam Lenhart, you got to follow that up.
Yep.
You got to follow that up with progress. You can't just rest on your laurels and be that guy. Nobody on this staff is going to put up with that.
No. One more thing specifically about the linebackers that I was kind of surprised on. And I said it in the offensive show where just because you came out first in that open practice, I'm not going to sit here and say that you're definitely a starter. I was kind of surprised on the defensive side when they did the team competition. Willis McGahee IV was out there with that first wave of defensive players a lot. And seeing a guy like that we haven't really heard a whole lot about.
We heard some. His name got dropped a little bit early. Yeah.
We hear much more about Shavers than we do about Willis McGahee. So seeing Willis McGahee IV out there a lot, again, as a true freshman, we talked about this.
Pedigree guy.
We talked about this with a guy like Vincent Shavers being from the Florida area, the Miami area. If we can get those guys on the field, Ja'Cory Barney, it's going to help us with recruiting down in Florida. You got those three guys specifically, Shavers, McGahee, and Barney. If we can show that we can get those guys on the field, that will help our recruiting down in Florida as well.
Especially if they're part of an elite defense.
Yes.
Which we're expecting this unit to be.
Yep.
I mean, at that open practice, what was some standout stuff you saw at the linebacker spot?
I mean, Javen Wright was an absolute stud at that practice. Stephen Thompson and John Bullock left a little bit to be desired. But again, I'm not freaking out. It was the fourth practice in fall camp. So
sure. And I mean, they've had a whole extra week now under their belts.
Yeah.
Since you saw that stuff. So everything could be different by this
100%. Point. Again, I'm not, by no means am I trying to say, oh, those guys need to sit now. Of course not. Because I think John Bullock is still going to be one of our stalwarts of the defense. But, Javen Wright, I liked the kid for a long time, and I think he's going to show out this year.
What did he show you that got you all hot and bothered?
Just his burst, the way he plays the run game. I mean, we saw it last year. He comes up and hits somebody.
Oh yeah.
I mean, he's a hit stick. That's literally what he was last year. I'm pretty sure he tied for second in tackles last year, and he only started like 4 or 5 games. So
that's wild.
If we get him a situation where he can start the entire season next to a guy like John Bullock, the sky's the limit.
Absolutely. And we had him listed pretty high on our countdown. I think he was top 15-ish.
Yeah.
Matt, anything else on the linebackers?
Not really. Outside of those top 3, I have a few questions about who comes in at 4th. As far as, there's 3 guys vying for that spot. And so we're just going to figure out who actually gets on the field.
That middle linebacker, you mean?
Yeah.
Well, and coming into last year, we were worried about the depth behind Heinrich and Reimer. And, there's a reason why I had Rob Dvorak, our linebackers coach, so high on my personal list of our top 50 list because of the job that he did last year and the job that he has to do this year.
Yeah.
He's such a fucking good coach. I'm so happy that he's here.
Well, I don't remember who Damien and Ravi were talking to. They had on a call in this morning on their show.
Yeah.
Or yesterday morning now. But I don't remember who they were talking to. It's going to drive me nuts.
I know who. I heard the same thing.
He made the comment that he thinks that this room might actually be better than they were last year. That it's more of a not really going to miss those 2 guys being gone because these guys might be better.
Yeah.
That's saying a huge thing when you think about the fact that John Bullock was a walk-on.
Yep.
I can't say enough about the guy. I think it's such a cool story to see a true Nebraska kid, right out in the backyard kid, that just followed his dream, walked on in Nebraska, and got the opportunity to prove himself and get coached up enough now that, talk about another guy that looks like his body totally changed over the offseason. I have a personal connection to his girlfriend's family. I don't even know her, but, the stuff that they talked about just the camaraderie and the unity that they're talking about now internally with this team and the way that it's a brotherhood and such a family atmosphere. It's like I'm getting goosebumps right now for like the 3rd time just since we started this show. There's so many good things to talk about on this, and he's a great story there. He's one of several in a long list of very top-heavy upperclassmen seniors that are going to be on this defense that's going to look really strong this year.
Yep.
Outside linebackers, the jack position, the will position, that's kind of a big shuffle. I mean, we've already talked about MJ a little bit, Prince Will. Who else outside of that? I mean, Willis McGahee, I think that's kind of where he's going to lie too, isn't it? Or is he more middle?
I think he's more outside.
Is he? Yeah.
I think so.
But those guys, I mean, like I said, there seems to have been a slight size variance, a slight size shift between a little bit of a gap created between those guys going to play D end and those outside linebacker spots. Running down to the D line, this is kind of the bread and butter bell cow. Blue ribbon.
You've got 5 starters on the
how many?
Are they going to be any good?
How many different ways can you say it? I mean,
They're fucking monsters. Is
Phil
what they
Steele
are.
has Nebraska rated as the fourth of 4 of the top 5 defensive lines in the country. 4 of them came out of the Big Ten, and it's kind of cool to be mentioned in that group because it's been a long time since it's felt like we had a truly dominant defense in general, but especially defensive line. The last people that I can say that we were truly dominant, like truly dominant, was not until back with Sue in 09.
Well, what was it, 2 years ago coming into the season, I talked about how scared I was of the defensive line.
With every right to be.
And I don't mean scared as in like they're going to be really good. I meant scared as in they're going to be really bad.
We have no depth. They're going to be a leaking sieve.
And
Jed was correct. There was a lot of leaking in the back end, is what we talked about.
And you
might have just been wet shorts at some point.
I was going to say, you need to see a doctor if you have that.
They were shitting their pants all over the field.
But we're talking 2 years later. I have zero fears.
I have fears for who they're playing against.
Oh, yeah.
The thing about this is, too, this is the first unit that, to me, looks like what every big boy program that you think of when you talk about they don't rebuild, they reload. They've got everybody lined up to come in behind them. Because last year, it was scary to think, what happens if Ty's injury pops out again, or if Hutmaker goes down? Who's going to come in for those guys? You had true freshmen backing them up.
Yep.
Riley Van Poppel is a dude that, for anybody out there, any of you fellow nerds that are playing college football 25, me and Matt are.
We know you're out there.
Jed never would.
No. Jesus Christ,
but
no.
if you've played on Dynasty mode, you might notice that after you get through the first season, Riley Van Poppel's a dude that they love. They absolutely love. And the scouting metrics on there, whether you like video games or not, that's some of the deepest scouting analytics that you can get your hands on as just a general consumer. And so when you're going and looking at stuff like that, they're projecting that he's going to be a dude who develops into something serious. He's already a guy who we listed in our top 50 heading into this season as a sophomore, a true sophomore, because he played so much last year as a freshman and was so effective. I'm excited about Nash and Ty. There's not much more we can say about them. But the dudes that are going to be around them and behind them, I'm just as equally excited about.
In other programs, Elijah Judy, Van Poppel, Lenhart, they are all starting. That's how deep this line is.
And then you add James Williams, and it just you just keep going.
Yeah. You can run, like I said before, you can run 4 deep on this defensive line, inside and outside, and you've got guys.
And then you have a true freshman monster that the team is talking up like crazy. Is Keona Davis.
Keona Davis, who, by the way, your defensive line coach, who happens to know Sue personally, played in the NFL with him. Not on the same team, but like it's not like he doesn't know who he's talking about. Referenced Keona Davis as he's going to look a lot, by the time he leaves here, he's going to look a lot like a number 93 that used to play here.
Yeah.
He wasn't talking about anybody else. He was talking about fucking Sue.
Yep.
And, Jed, you were at that practice, and everybody at that practice, first of all, he was Keona Wilhite when he flipped his commit from Washington to Nebraska. But Mitch Sherman talked about it on his podcast. It was one of the first things he mentioned after that open practice was, I had no idea who that dude was. I was trying to figure out who he was on my roster because he doesn't look like a freshman. And I didn't recognize the name for a transfer.
To be fair, he was a guy that I missed. It was like
I don't know how you missed him. I've seen the pictures from that, and I'm like, Jesus Christ.
No, but like I told you in the offensive one, there was so much to see.
Yeah.
I couldn't see everything. I had to get my nephew Gavin to help me look at other people and stuff like that. The next time I go, I'm going with you guys, and we're
taking notebooks,
and we're saying, okay, these are the guys that you look at. These are the guys that you look like.
This is the unit you're responsible for.
There was so much to see that you couldn't see everything. So
yeah, and that's also, you kind of got that vibe when you read the different articles that came out from the actual professional writers and stuff like that. The guys that have talked about it. You can tell that there were certain things they looked for and certain things that they missed. And everybody seems to have kind of figured it all out altogether. But, I mean, there's just so much to be excited about here.
Yep.
You hear about how long Sewell Lefotu is, or how strong he is, excuse me.
I was going to say, you were getting a little personal there.
How long is he? But then you add in,
He's going to introduce himself to some of the opposing offenses.
Speaking of a leaky back
Say
end,
hello. Say hello. But you already mentioned James Williams, and he's a guy that when Terrence Knighton was up there on the podium, mentioned him as, last year he was nothing but a pass rush specialist.
Yep.
Like that was his whole thing. You did the stat on it when we were talking about him in the countdown was, he's a guy that, what'd you say, like 92% of the plays he was in on were pass plays?
I can find it, but go ahead, keep
Something
talking.
along those lines. That's huge. And he was singled out in the press conferences saying, he was a pass defense specialist guy last year, and now he has to take that next step. He has to add, round out his game, add more to it, and that's what they're working on with him. They identify all these individual things to work on, not just unit things to work on. And I think with the tremendous amount of extra reps because of the way that they practice that they get, you're seeing development at such a quicker pace than what you see in a lot of other teams. Anybody else? I mean, Elijah Judy, that's a guy that we haven't heard a ton about, but everybody talks about how his body shape is different and he's so fast.
Yeah.
That's what you keep hearing.
The speed on him is pretty incredible.
The speed both inside and outside, because he can bounce in and out. That was one of my big questions was, well, if he trimmed down and he's got more speed, is he going to be playing more outside stuff? But if that becomes the case, you also look at, well, they trimmed down Hutmaker, they trimmed down Ty Robinson, and from what I understand, they're lining both of those guys out on the outside as well. How terrifying is that, thinking that Hutmaker, as bull rush of a dude as he was last year, running up the middle, up the gut, getting double teamed for 3/4 of the time he was out there, imagine that guy being quick enough now to come on the outside.
You're not going to have enough guys to double team everybody that you need to.
No. But by the way, really quickly, just circling back to the James Williams stat that I had, 83% of his snaps came on passing packages.
83. I thought it was 93, but yeah.
Yeah.
That's wild.
Still
That's
reasonably
wild.
high.
Yes.
It's very high. But outside of that, guys, I mean, we've kind of broken it down from these groups. I mean, what are we expecting to see? We asked you, one of your over-under questions was, is this going to be a top, I think you said top 20 or top 25?
Top 20 scoring defense.
Yeah, and I mean, the point was made. Yeah, sure, we played a pretty cake schedule when it comes to opposing offenses last year. But how much better are they going to be in year 2 of Tony White?
I think statistically it will not be as good. I mean, it could be equal or whatever. I'm not expecting a statistical upgrade, but that doesn't, it's kind of what I said about the Evan Cooper and John Butler situation. The stats might come back to the pack a little bit, but that doesn't mean that the defense is going to be worse. I think that we're going to be playing different teams. And that aspect, and also we're going to have a much different offense. And it's going to change the way that the defense has to play. And all that stuff. Like, just because I think that
maybe they won't be putting their backs against the wall at the 25-yard line all the time, just to counterbalance your argument about statistically not being as good. If the offense holds on to the ball more and doesn't put him in those on, starting on the minus 20, the minus 30, the minus 40, if they're not being put in those situations, how much statistically better are they going to be in all those where, the field goal was already a gimme because they turned it over on the 25? Or the touchdown was a gimme because they just drove a 13-yard drive down, scored a touchdown because it was the only one we've given up all game. But now 2 plays later, we turn the ball over and we're right back with a dog-tired defense out there.
Yeah.
And I think, analytics aside, just the eye test is going to look as good, if not better, this year.
I agree with that.
It's another year of being in Tony White's defense. It's another year of this total package defense that we're trying to get used to, where guys can shift around and play different positions and do whatever they want. And I only see upside, at least from the eye test standpoint.
Like the eye test, I think we're going to look the same, if not better. That's why I say statistically, it might look a little worse. But again, that doesn't mean that the defense is going to play worse.
Stats aside, when you looked at our defense last year, there were 2 primary factors that, in my opinion, would keep me from calling it an elite defense. And Tony White loves to use the word elite. Matt Rhule loves to use the word elite. Takeaways and third downs. We were not very good on third downs last year. And if you remember back early mid-spring practice, I think, when they first announced that, the whole mantra for this year was going to be chasing 3, get 3 better, blah, 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 all this. A lot of people reference that as points. Tony White, if you remember, came out super fiery hot in an interview and was like, yeah, I just found out how bad we were on third downs last year, and I got to fix that. And that became a primary point of emphasis for the defense this offseason, along with the turnovers.
Yep. They
want to create turnovers, and they need to do better, especially late in game on third downs. Is that something you see making progress this year?
Absolutely. Not only from a standpoint of all these players are going to be more comfortable in the system, but if it's an emphasis, I expect it to get better. It's the same thing that we talked about with the turnovers. If it's an emphasis for the offense to turn the ball over less, they had freaking linemen out there doing, how to carry the ball drills. So
everybody on the team had to do it, including coaches, from what I heard.
If it's an emphasis to him, I expect it to get better.
Josh Peterson has a stat that he's mentioned for the last couple of days, and I don't remember exactly what it is, but it was something about what our third down conversions were in our wins and our third down conversions were in our losses, and they were drastically different. I have a thing on my computer somewhere that I don't know where it is at the moment, but maybe I'll tweet out some of the stats again that I did when we did a show on Tony White being pissed off about our third down stuff, where I broke down our third downs on like third down and distance to goes and stuff like that. That really does show where we can improve on our third down defense. That one is specifically, but you talk about takeaways. That's one of the things, and we bring up one of these questions on our prop bet questions, but I'm going to combine it with another thing that Rhule has been talking about over the last week or so. One of his goals for our defense is 40 sacks and 20 takeaways. Do you think we can get to both of those?
Like I said,
the last time
we recorded the preview.
Yeah, but the last time we had 40 and 20 was 2009. Obviously, pretty good defense.
Damn good defense.
Sam McEwen came up with the stats. He looked all this stuff up. Through the last 3 seasons, there's only been 16 teams in the entire country that had 40 sacks and 20 takeaways. 13 of them won 10 games, 2 of them won 8 games, and 1 of them won 9 games. And only 3 of those 16 were from the Big Ten. So, do you think that we can get to both, not just one, but both 40 sacks and 20 takeaways?
Matt tells me no. I think I could see us getting to one or the other, and I wouldn't even want to guess which one because I think they're both attainable.
Yes,
but
I don't
that's
think
a lot of.
I don't think the takeaways is attainable if you're not getting to the 40 sacks number. Because if you're getting to the 40 sacks number, you're getting consistent pressure on the quarterback, probably without a lot of extra pass rushers, and you're causing fumbles or causing rush decision making to get interceptions.
Well, and it has to be a sack, not just a rushed play. And so that's my point is you might be taking away from sacks if you're getting an interception.
I think that's
fair.
I think
you're taking away interceptions.
One can be attained, but the takeaways can be attained without getting to the 40 sacks. Because, for instance, last year there was one team in the Big Ten that got to 40 plus sacks. There were 4 teams that got to 20 plus takeaways.
That's fair.
2022, there was one team that got to 40 sacks. There were 5 teams that got to 20 takeaways. So I don't think that it's mutually exclusive that you have to get to 40 to get to the 20. You can still get to the 20 and not get to the 40.
That's fair.
So I think, is it possible? Absolutely. Especially with this defense.
But do you expect that
No.
Like I said, that's the goal.
You get to 35 and 18, and I'm still very happy with our defense.
Absolutely, I am. Yeah.
As good and elite as I think this defense is going to be, I'm going to say yes. I think it's attainable.
Yes.
You're not making me choose whether or not I would bet on one side or the other.
I'm just
because I truly I'm kind of 51-49 on this, 50-50 if you will. But I think it's attainable with the guys that we have, unless the defensive backs, especially at corner, unless they really struggle this year, I don't see how that's going to be possible, especially when you talk about the ball hawk that is Tommy Hill. If whoever you're putting across from, I don't remember the last time Buford was playing corner and how much, from an interception standpoint, we don't have the stats pulled up, but I don't know how much of a ball hawk he is. But Gifford wasn't too much of a ball hawk last year. You don't see that as much, but with as much emphasis and deliberateness has been put on this, they're in second year of the system. They're no longer in, I have to think about what I'm doing to make sure I don't fuck up and get out of place. That's all second nature now.
Yep.
That's where you start seeing the the added things that are gonna do things that are gonna get guys to the NFL. Because let's be real about it. Tommy Hill, you want to play in the NFL after this year, that's all fine and good, but coverage ain't going to get you there by itself.
No.
You're going to have to take the ball away a couple times. Gifford, if you want a real shot at getting to the NFL, you came back for this because you believe in what's going on with Nebraska, but you also came back to up your draft stock.
Yep.
If you want a real shot at making a team, you got to pick some balls off. Or you got to create some fumbles, you got to rip some out. Those things have to happen, and if we're going to be an elite defense, the turnovers have to come.
I agree. I would rather, between the two, I would rather have the 20 takeaways than the 40 sacks.
If I had to pick, yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It only takes 1 sack a week to get a free Big Mac.
I don't think that I don't think that we get to the 40-20, but to me it's a great goal to have. Like you guys said, it's an attainable goal. Like you could say, oh, it's a great goal to have 70 sacks and 40 turnovers. Like, okay, it doesn't mean that it's attainable. 40 and 20 is attainable. I just don't know that we'll get that far.
Where would you set a number on the tackles for loss? Team total. I mean, is that something that is in the 80s or 90s probably? Because when you think about it from a rushing standpoint, the way that this run defense, if you want to look at something that I think is going to maybe take a step forward this year, especially when you look at the offenses we're going to play, I think our rush defense could be even better than it was last year.
So, for instance, we had 76 tackles for loss last year. We were 4th in the conference. I mean,
So yeah,
I get
80, 90.
80.
And we had 32 sacks, is that right?
Yeah.
So yeah. I mean, if you're gonna set it at 40 sacks, I think based on the offenses that we're going to play this year, you got to be shooting for at least 90 on the tackles for
I don't know
loss.
that we'll get to 90, but
Yeah. Where would that put us ranked? First?
for 80, no, it would
For 90?
For 90, we'd be second because
Second
there was
to who?
111 to Penn State last year.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, they were kind of good.
Their
God damn. 111?
their D line was insane last year.
Yeah. And they're
but
actually still
here's the
gonna be
thing.
good
If
this year.
you want to be insane, you got to shoot for numbers like that. So I think 90 is a solid number to shoot for there.
Yeah, but like Michigan had the best defense, and they had 83 last year.
Yeah.
So, again, comparison speaking,
That's fair. That's fair. And they played in 3 extra games.
yeah, they played in 15 games, and they had 83. So, I'd say 80.
That's kind of wild, actually.
Tackles for loss or 1 yard stops.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
True.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah.
4th and 12 and 4th and 7.
Hey,
That was
I
the
would
thing.
Or
I'd be
tackle,
very happy with Michigan's defense from last year.
or a tackle for loss or 3 pass breakups.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's that.
Yeah.
Like-
Either one. I'm here for it.
Yeah.
Love it.
I'll give you 1 completion. You give me 1 interception.
Yeah. Well, but again,
Let's make a deal.
even if we're just talking tackles for loss, you don't have to have an interception. You just 3 pass breakups. Like it's just
And that's more where it comes down to the eye test for me is if they look fucking amazing, the analytics will fix themselves.
yes.
And this may be the most unbelievable night in Cornhusker football history.